Here's a test you're going to fail. Walk through your home tonight and find one tool that still does its whole job with every wire in the house dead. Not one that survives a blackout. One that works, heats, cools, cooks, warns you, wakes you. Take your time. The honest answer sits at 0. Maybe 1 if you're lucky. Now meet someone who would find that genuinely funny. Kansas, 1930. A 34-year-old farm wife, 9 miles past the last power pole, and nothing in her house cares. She wakes a fire nobody has started in years. She charges her refrigerator on a kerosene flame before breakfast. Her bread kneaded itself in the pantry while she slept. She reads tomorrow's storm off a brass dial in the hallway. And when a bell starts ringing a mile away, she can tell you who just died and how old they were. 7 tools ran that world, and I'm going to show you exactly how every single one worked, close enough that you could run them yourself. And save your surprise for the 7th, because it isn't a thing you can hold. You've heard it your whole life. You just never knew it was talking. The fire nobody ever lit. Quick question. When did you last start a fire? Fine. Now, when did you last keep one? Because for most of history, that second skill was the entire game, and the first one barely existed. Picture a cabin in Ohio, January of 1841, an hour before dawn. A woman kneels at a hearth that looks stone cold, and instead of reaching for flint or kindling, she starts digging in the ashes. Under that gray blanket is last night's fire, still alive. She isn't starting a fire this morning, she's waking one up. And there's a fair chance nobody in that house has truly started one in years. Here's why. Before 1826, there is no such thing as a practical match. Starting a fire from dead cold means a tinder box, flint, a steel striker, and charred cloth to catch the spark. You strike in the dark with numb fingers, coax a faint glow into a nest of tinder, and breathe it up to flame. On a good morning, minutes. On a damp one, misery. So the entire household ran on a different principle. Never let the fire die. The technique was called banking, and the physics is lovely. At night, you rake the coals into a tight mound and bury them under a thick layer of ash. Ash is a superb insulator, and packed over coals, it does 2 jobs at once. It chokes the airflow down to a whisper so the coals burn impossibly slowly, and it traps their heat around them. Starve a fire of oxygen almost, but not quite, completely, and it doesn't die. It hibernates. Come morning, you rake the blanket off, the coals underneath are still orange, and dry kindling plus a few breaths gives you a roaring fire inside a minute. Get it wrong though, and you feel it. Banked too loose, air leaks in and the coals burn themselves out by 3 in the morning. Packed too tight or under damp ash, and you smother them dead. And now you're the one striking sparks in the dark, or walking to the neighbors with a covered pan to carry home live coals. Borrowing fire was a real errand with real etiquette, as normal as borrowing sugar. Whole towns organized around this. In the Middle Ages, an evening bell ordered every household to cover its hearth for the night. Some kept a fitted metal dome made for exactly that job, partly to save the coals, mostly so a town built of wood didn't burn while it slept. And in the Scottish Highlands, banking the peat fire was so woven into life that it came with its own recorded prayers, spoken over the embers like a small nightly ceremony. There were hearths in those islands that families swore had not gone cold in 100 years. Now do something for me. Count the flames burning in your home right now. Go ahead. I'll wait. If your answer is 0, you're living in one of the first houses in human history with no living fire in it anywhere. Your grandparents' house had one flame that never slept, the pilot light, and electronic ignition quietly killed even that. And notice the inversion, because it's the whole point. Today, people practice starting fires. That world practiced never having to. If heat ever truly matters in your house again, the skill that counts is the ash blanket, not the spark. A kept fire warmed the room. But in the kitchen, it did something stranger. It ran the machines. The dog in the wheel, and the bread that kneaded itself. How do you automate a kitchen when the nearest electric motor is 80 years away? Because they did, with a chimney, a clockwork, and for a while, a very unlucky dog. Picture the kitchen of a busy English inn in 1750. A 20-pound roast is turning slowly and evenly in front of the fire, and there is nobody anywhere near it. Look up the chimney and you'll find the motor. It's called a smoke jack, a metal turbine mounted inside the flue, spun by nothing but the hot air rising off the fire. A chain and a pair of gears carry that spin back down to the spit. The fire is rotating its own dinner. And here's the elegant part. The hotter the fire burns, the faster the air rises, and the faster the roast turns. Crude self-regulation, centuries before anyone said the word thermostat. Leonardo da Vinci sketched one in his notebooks. Households that couldn't afford a chimney turbine wound up a clock jack instead. A weight-driven mechanism with the same guts as a grandfather clock, turning the spit for an hour per winding. And before either of those spread, grand kitchens ran on something stranger. An actual dog. The turnspit was a real breed, short-legged, long-bodied, built like a furry keg, bred for exactly one job, trotting inside a wooden wheel on the wall, which drove the spit through a pulley. They worked in pairs, alternating days, because the work was hot and endless. When jacks and iron cook ranges took over, people simply stopped breeding them, and the breed went extinct. One preserved specimen survives, stuffed, in a museum in Wales. Kitchen automation created a dog and then deleted it. Say that sentence at dinner and watch what happens. The farm-scale versions were humbler and better. By 1904, you could buy the universal bread maker, a tin pail with a hand crank and a dough hook inside. Measure your ingredients at night. Crank the handle for 3 minutes, clamp the lid, go to bed. The dough kneads in the pail and rises overnight. You bake at dawn. The bread machine was not invented in the 1980s. It was electrified, and beside it on the shelf sat the fireless cooker, the direct ancestor of your slow cooker. Boil a pot hard for 10 minutes, then bury it in a heavily insulated box, sometimes with hot soapstone discs above and below, and walk away for the afternoon. The physics is simply this. Cooking is temperature held over time, and a well-insulated box keeps a boiled pot above cooking temperature for hours with no further fuel at all. During the First World War, the government printed pamphlets urging families to cook exactly this way to save fuel. One honest note about the fancy stuff: smoke jacks lived in inns and manor kitchens, and the dog mostly did too. The crank pail and the insulated box were the versions that actually reached the farmhouse. Your slow cooker is a fireless cooker with a cord. Your bread machine is the universal with a motor. And a cooler, 2 towels, and 1 hard-boiled pot will still cook dinner at your house tonight. That's the entire machine. The kitchen solved dinner. Winter asked a nastier question, and the answer was never heating the house. The bed that was a building. Where was the warm part of an American house in January of 1720? Careful! It's a trick question. There wasn't one. In Boston, one winter in the early 1700s, a minister sat close enough to his own fire to tend it and recorded with some irritation that the ink was freezing in his inkwell as he wrote. Indoors, beside the fire, frozen ink. And that was normal, because pre-modern homes never seriously tried to heat rooms at all. An open fireplace is a spectacularly bad furnace. Most of its heat rushes straight up the flue, and the draft it creates pulls cold outside air in through every gap in the walls, so a roaring fire could leave the far side of the room below freezing. Heating the whole volume of a house was a lost cause, and nobody fought that war. The strategy was different. Heat bodies, not buildings. Once you see that strategy, a whole museum of mysterious objects snaps into focus. The soapstone slab, a block of dense stone heated on the stove, wrapped in flannel, and slid into a bed an hour before you climbed in. Soapstone earns its keep through heat capacity. Dense stone soaks up enormous heat and releases it slowly, warming a bed for hours instead of minutes. The foot stove, a pierced tin box holding a small tray of embers. And the reason it exists is that churches went unheated for centuries. You did not find warmth at church. You carried fire there, set the box under your skirts or your boots, and sat through a 2-hour sermon on top of it. But the masterpiece is one you've been looking at your whole life without ever reading it. The 4-poster bed with curtains, the one in every castle film and every period drama. That was never decoration, that was equipment. Close the curtains and you have built a room inside the room, a fabric box of a couple hundred cubic feet instead of a couple thousand. A resting human body gives off roughly the heat of a 100-watt bulb, and inside that closed canopy, the heat has nowhere to go. Your own body warms the little microclimate degree by degree through the night, while the actual room sits near freezing, and the heavy fabric kills the drafts, which matters just as much because moving air strips heat off your skin faster than still air ever could. The canopy overhead is the heat cap. The nightcap on your head insulates the one part of you left outside the blankets. None of it was style. All of it was thermal engineering done in cloth, and it carried a failure mode with teeth. Warming pans full of embers burned houses down when someone left them in the bed instead of sweeping them through and taking them out. And plenty of families learned that the hard way. If your heat ever dies on a winter night, this is the whole protocol, and it's centuries old. Shrink the envelope. One room, one bed, blankets hung around it like curtains, and something warm and dense inside it first. You insulate the bed, not the house. They made heat personal. But the strangest trick on this whole list runs the other way. They made cold out of fire. The refrigerator you charged like a phone. It's July of 1930, and 9 out of 10 American farms have no electricity, with none on the way. So how is there cold milk in a Kansas farmhouse in the middle of summer? Before I tell you, stop and guess. What could a refrigerator possibly run on out there? Because here's what the farm wife actually does at dawn. She walks to the kerosene stove and lifts one end of a strange steel dumbbell onto the flame. That dumbbell is a Crosley Icyball, and it may be the cleverest appliance America ever forgot. 2 steel balls joined by a bent pipe. Inside, ammonia dissolved in water. Every morning you set the charging ball over the kerosene burner for about 90 minutes, while the other ball sits in a bucket of cool water. The heat drives the ammonia out of the water as vapor, and in the water-cooled ball, it condenses into pure liquid. That's the whole charge. Now you carry the thing inside and set it on the icebox cabinet. Hot ball hanging outside, cold ball through the notch into the food compartment. And for the rest of the day, that liquid ammonia slowly evaporates and migrates back toward the other side. Evaporation absorbs heat. That is the entire secret, and you already know it in your skin, because it's the reason sweat cools you. The evaporating ammonia pulls heat out of the food box hour after hour, and the cabinet stays cold for a full day on one morning's charge. No cord, no compressor, no moving parts at all. Nothing to wear out, nothing to oil. You recharge your refrigerator with fire every morning, exactly the way you charge a phone every night. And hold on to the flip at the center of it, because it's the part worth saying out loud. Heating one end of the machine is what makes the other end cold. Fire in, cold out. It demanded respect, though. The system holds ammonia under pressure, and a corroded tank or careless overheating could rupture. Ammonia is not a gas you want loose in a kitchen. These were sturdy machines, but they were never toys. And the idea didn't die, it changed clothes. The same absorption cycle, run continuously off a small, steady flame, became the silent gas refrigerators of the 30s and 40s. And it is the propane fridge humming in RVs and off-grid cabins right now, still flame-powered, still without a single moving part. So if you ever need cold with 0 watts, know that it's a solved 100-year-old problem. The propane refrigerator at the RV dealer is a 1930 farmhouse machine wearing new clothes. Fire for heat, fire for cold. And one more, the strangest of the 3. Light, bought at the hardware store as a bucket of gray rock. The gasworks buried in the backyard. How does a farmhouse in 1905 get bright, white, city-quality light when the nearest power line is 20 miles and 30 years away? Picture an Indiana parlor that year, lit steady and white from fixtures on the wall. Real gaslight in a county with no gas company and not a single wire. The gas company was in the backyard. Thousands of American farmhouses, churches, and small-town hotels in those years installed their own private gasworks. A sealed generator tank in the yard or cellar, loaded with lumps of a gray rock called calcium carbide. Let water drip slowly onto that rock, and it gives off acetylene, a gas that burns with a brilliant white flame, far brighter and cleaner than the yellow smudge of a kerosene wick. Pipe it through the walls to fixtures in every room, and a 1905 farmhouse glows like a townhouse. And you bought your light at the hardware store by the 100-pound can. Not oil, not wicks, rock. Shelf-stable light, scooped like gravel. Now here's the twist that makes this one worth repeating. Calcium carbide doesn't occur in nature. It's manufactured by cooking lime and coke at ferocious temperatures in electric arc furnaces, which is exactly why the young carbide industry planted itself beside Niagara Falls, where the cheap power was. So follow the energy. A hydroelectric dam pours current into a furnace. The furnace bakes that energy into a rock. The rock rides a train to a small-town hardware store, and a farm with no wires burns Niagara Falls in its parlor every evening. Those houses were electrified after all. The electricity just arrived in a can. So why isn't your house running on this? Because acetylene forgave nothing. It's touchy stuff, and enough generator mishaps and leaks ended in explosions that insurance companies were asking hard questions right as the power lines finally marched out from town. This tool earned its extinction, and honesty says so plainly. Its one pocket-sized descendant survived another century, the carbide lamp on a miner's or a caver's helmet. The same rock, the same slow drip of water, shrunk to fist size. If you've ever watched one hiss to life underground, you've seen the last living piece of a dead national infrastructure. You don't want this one back. That part is settled. But the next time someone tells you off-grid light means batteries and panels, you'll know history briefly ran a third lane. Energy stored as rock on a shelf. Heat, cold, light. The house produced all of it. The last two tools produced something rarer. They produced information. The storm alarm that ran on leeches. There's no forecast, no radio, no radar, and a hailstorm that can erase your entire year's income is 6 hours away. What in your front hall warns you? Picture a farmer in 1892 pausing at the brass dial by the door, tapping the glass once and deciding, based on what the needle does next, whether to cut hay today or lose the crop tomorrow. That dial is an aneroid barometer, and the machine inside is one sealed metal capsule with most of the air pumped out. When atmospheric pressure rises, it squeezes the capsule flatter. When pressure falls, the capsule relaxes and swells. A small lever and spring translate that flex into a moving needle. Why does that predict weather? Because storms are low-pressure systems. Falling pressure means air is rising over your head, and rising air cools, condenses, and becomes cloud and rain. The needle isn't guessing, it's reading the sky's plumbing. But the real skill, the thing that separated the farmer from the dial, was reading the rate. A single glance tells you almost nothing, the tap tells you everything. Tap the glass and the needle jumps to its true position, and now the direction and speed of that jump is tomorrow. A slow, steady fall across a day means a long, grinding blow is coming. A fast crash means something violent and brief. Sailors compressed the entire science into one rhyme. Long foretold, long last, short notice, soon past. Checked twice a day and weighed against the wind in the sky, one brass instrument on a nail was a private weather service. Now, before I tell you about the strangest forecasting machine of that century, guess what powered it? Not springs, not mercury, animals. At the Great Exhibition of 1851, a doctor unveiled the Tempest Prognosticator. 12 leeches, each in its own glass bottle, rigged to a bell. Leeches grow restless and climb as storm weather approaches, and when enough of them climbed, they tripped tiny whalebone levers and rang the bell. More rings, more certainty. Serious Victorians took it seriously, and the funny part is that the leeches weren't entirely wrong. The animal was responding to something real. It was the machine built around it that was absurd. Honesty demands the flip side too. The storm glass, that pretty sealed bottle of camphor crystals, sold for generations as a forecaster and famously shipped to fishing villages by the Navy Admiral who gave us the very word forecast, mostly fails modern testing. The crystals respond to temperature, not to coming weather. A beautiful instrument in the wrong department, a thermometer in a costume. And that was the discipline this world actually ran on, sorting the barometer's real physics from the leech's real but ridiculous biology, from the storm glass's lovely nonsense, because choosing wrong was the difference between hay in the barn and hay rotting black in the field. A $25 aneroid barometer on your wall is weather intelligence that needs no signal and no power, and one rule unlocks most of it. A fast fall means act now. Hang it, tap it daily for a week, and you've recovered the skill. The barometer told one household what was coming. The last tool told the whole county, and you've been hearing it your entire life without once reading it. The bell that knew who died before telephones? How does news cross 5 miles of farmland in 10 minutes? It doesn't take the road, it takes the air, and everyone within earshot can decode it. An August afternoon in the 1880s. Every field hand in the county straightens up at once because the church bell has begun a slow, strange pattern, and all of them are counting. The steeple was a broadcast tower, and the bell spoke in a code people were raised on. In many English parishes, and the custom crossed the ocean with the colonists, a death was announced in teller strokes. 3 sets of 3 for a man, 2 sets of 3 for a woman. A pause, then 1 slow stroke for every year of the person's age. The whole village counts along in silence, runs the total against the mental list of who has been sick, and knows, often to a certainty, exactly who has died, without a single name being spoken. 9 tailors make a man, the old saying went. 9 tellers. A county-wide announcement transmitted in 90 seconds of bronze, and the code book was thicker than that. A frantic, continuous clanging meant fire. Drop everything and run toward it. Some English towns rang their bells backwards as the alarm for invasion or disaster. The same bells, deliberately struck in reverse order so that the wrongness itself was the message. Below the church, every farm ran its own channel. Dinner bells, tin horns, and near the coasts, conch shells. And because every bell carries its own weight and pitch, a hand plowing a mile out knew which farm was calling him. A steady pattern meant come and eat. Continuous meant come now. Something is wrong. The air over a county was a working network with named nodes, and every family had an address made of sound. Cities pushed it one step further and turned waking up into a subscription. The knocker-upper, a real profession, walked industrial streets before dawn with a long pole. One famous London woman preferred a pea shooter, rattling bedroom windows until the client stirred for a few pennies a week, well into the 20th century. And one bell outranked them all. Remember tool number 1, the evening bell that ordered a whole town to cover its fires, the fitted metal dome waiting by the hearth? That bell and that dome had a name. In the old French of the Normans, couvre-feu, cover the fire. Say it fast for 900 years and it becomes a word you've known your whole life. Curfew. The last tool on this list spent centuries giving orders to the first one. The network ran the hearth. This list was a circle the entire time. And now look at what these 7 really were. They read banked embers the way you read a battery bar. They read a trembling needle the way you read a radar map. They read a bell the way you read a headline. Heat, cold, light, weather, news. None of it ran on power. All of it ran on reading. Which means the title over this list was never really about objects. Antique shops are full of barometers and foot stoves and dinner bells. The curtained beds are still for sale. What you don't have, the thing that actually went extinct, is the reading. A tool you can't read isn't a tool. It's decoration. Strip away the bronze and the brass and the soapstone, and the 7 tools were always one tool. Attention, paid daily to slow signals, and compounded over a lifetime. None of it needed an account, a grid, or a delivery truck. It needed maintenance, memory, and the patience to check a needle twice a day. And here's the good news hiding inside all of it. None of these skills is extinct. They're dormant. A barometer hangs on a nail in one afternoon and teaches you its one big rule inside a week. Banking a fire is a single evening of practice in a backyard fire pit. The curtained bed is bed sheets and a length of clothesline. Days to relearn, not decades, because the hard part was never the doing. It was knowing the thing could be read at all. So, from your own family, which of these was still alive in your grandparents' house? And which one do you wish you'd asked about while somebody was still around to show you?